Yo, was good. Was goody. Yeah, yeah. Hello, friends. Well, hello. Everybody gets love and coffee break. There's nothing better than the smell of a fresh, full cup of coffee. Well, there's a couple of things better than that, but it's kind of high up there. Well, hello. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? I'm happy to report that I survived the tornado apocalypse. Um, it's been pretty crazy in my area. It's got to be. It has to be months, maybe like a strong month and a half of like every 3 days there's a lightning storm or a thunderstorm or some sort of storm that is like knocking people's powers out or causing people to have large trees fall in their yards or power lines go down. It's a lot. And luckily this time, and as I almost can't say luckily because I know a bunch of people who lived in areas a little outside of the city where the newscasters today were like losing their mind. Uh, yeah, so out right outside of Philly, they were tracking two tornadoes that actually touched down, um, and like on different sides of this township, like right outside of Philly in the suburbs, and it kind of like went like this and just missed Philly. But we still got rain and all that and like the high winds. But it kind of reminds me of playing Sim City when the natural disasters come through and wreck you, wreck your board. uh, Fletch, what up? Fletch says all your storms come my way in New York. Hearing thunder right now. See, I never lied. I never lied to you. Yeah, thanks. One of my buddies who was kind of like in harm's way told me later that everybody's fine, but there was a Lowe's in their area that isn't there anymore, and there was a car dealership that I don't know. You may have a have a new 21 Altima sitting in your driveway that you didn't pay for. So it's really scary, and especially for us East Coast people who aren't used to that life. Like as if you live in the Midwest or something like that, it's kind of like, oh, this must be Tuesday, but it's pretty scary. And I think everybody in true East Coast fashion, we're over it. So even with like the news reporter going, he said, and I feel bad because this is how you have to kind of report to people because no one listens. He said, listen, I am not making this up. I'm not being extra. I'm reading it right off of the ticker. You need to go to the lowest base room in your buildings. If you have a basement, get in it. If you're in an apartment complex, go in the bathroom and get in the bathtub. If you have a helmet, some sort of hard hat, put it on because you're at risk to things falling on your head. This is serious. JRD says, I played old SimCity, always got Godzilla. Um, it's funny. I don't want to talk too much about video games, but I always do. I try to make it accessible for people who aren't of that life. But some of my favorite games are like games that everybody if doesn't know, if they don't play it, at least they know about it. Like SimCity was a cultural shift, and I guess The Sims is even bigger than that. And it's funny. I think there's people who play The Sims who've never heard of Sim City, or even the other egghead sim games like Sim Ant, Sim Earth. One of my favorites was Sim Tower, which I think they turned into. There's a mobile game. I forget the name of it, but it's not Sim. It's not a Sim game. They changed the name of it, where you're basically filling a apartment building or a tower full of people and restaurants and buildings, and you can get people stuck on an elevator. But yeah, in Sim City, like you, if you got bored, you can press the disaster button, and a tornado will come through. And then in Sim City 2000, I think there was a UFO that would come through and zap half of your city, and then you had to rebuild it. I stopped loving SimCity when it got too complex. I think it was SimCity 2000, where now you had to start worrying about the underground of your city. Like you had to link water. Sure, my Philly. You had to link up the water lines underneath the buildings. So, and if there, it would kind of stunt the growth of your city if you didn't have running plumbing, and it just got a little bit too much for me, and I was out. But anybody have any old school computer games that they really loved? Shout me out. And hello to everybody. Welcome to Coffee Break. Let me put some graphics on here. um, let's see. JRD says, "Yeah, I stopped after the first or second SimCity. Just not a gamer, but my cities always did better than Richmond's. So make of that what you will." One of my buddies was a huge Tycoon fan. And what I mean by that, there was a series of these are mostly computer games we're talking about. If they're really popular, they ported them to consoles. Transportation Tycoon was a really big one. I think after that, it started getting stupid, and it would all just be like shovelware. Like those garbage game CDs you'd find in the spinner rack at Staples. Like 1,001 casino games, and Pizza Tycoon, like not that good stuff. I mean, not that stuff. But Transportation Tycoon was really great. And I just found out that the guy who did Transport Tycoon, I think his name was Chris Sawyer, was the same guy that did Roller Coaster Tycoon. Roller Coaster Tycoon is amazing. And I think they have it on mobile now. I think Chris Sawyer's out of the game. He doesn't even do stuff anymore. But the Roller Coaster Tycoon games are great. They started to get dumb after a while when it had the 3D. You could sit in the front seat of the roller coaster and do like it's just it's too much. Um, but that's such a great game, and I remember I had so much fun with that game, and I got my mother into it, and she would make parks and then send me the. I think she emailed them to me, or we had a floppy disk that we would mail back and forth. Shit, what up, Carlos? Yeah, you know about that. Here we go. This is starting. Yo, what up, Matt? It was good seeing you last night. Mutant League Football is so good. Let me tell you a story about Mutant League Football. So, Mutant League Football, if you don't know, and they just came out with a new version of it. I think it's on Steam or something like that, and it's called like Football Mutant League or something. They flipped the name. Um, Basically, it's Blood Bowl, like that tabletop war game, where you have like zombies and skeletons and orcs and all that kind of stuff, and they play football. And by the end of the game, like all of your people are dead. And they named all of the people after kind of like current football stars. Like the best player in Mutant League Football, I think his name was Bones Jackson. So they had a contest. I think EA had a contest to name players for Mutant League Hockey. I've never played Mutant League Hockey. I've never held it in my hands. It was one of those games that you read in the magazine that it existed, but I've never seen this game. So I wrote in a name for my guy, and I sent it in, and I'm salty I didn't win, and I think I got cheated. You ready for this name? Payne Gretzky. Come on. El Jamal checking in with Civ. I have some buddies who are Civ stands. They, and this is funny when we talk about computer games. There's a lot of people, even people in this room, who go, "I'm not a gamer, or I don't play games." But there's a game that you play, and you might just have that one little icon on your desktop, and you boot that up. It could be Solitaire, it could be Snake, it could be Minesweeper. But Civ is one of those games. I've never really got into Civ. There was a game me and my cousins uh, used to play called Empire, War Game of the Century. And Empire has been around like back in MIT computer labs, just like black, like almost like green screens and black and white monitors, where it was kind of the basis for all of these war games. Like probably the closest thing to Empire is Advance Wars on Game Boy Advance. So good. Jared D says, "Great. It ain't hard to tell today, by the way." Thank you, sir. If you don't know what Jared D is talking about, he's referring to It Ain't Hard to Tell, the twice monthly, bi-weekly podcast I do with Mike Hawthorne. That's right, Marvel. Well, not anymore. Mike Hawthorne just wrapped up his Marvel contract. So he is out in the world. I'm not going to spill his business. You'll have to follow and find out what happens next for Mike. But yeah, it's a byproduct of our both of our Patreon campaigns, where we answer questions from our patronuses, and it's a lot of fun. If you're interested, you should go check it out. You can access it through my or Mike's Patreon. Thank you, JRD. If you start talking about it, I may not put it on screen, because that's why you got to join the Patreon. Yes, Scum Games. Fletch says Day of the Tentacle was always one of my favorites, one of the LucasArts games, which is also kind of in the same vein as Maniac Mansion, Full Throttle, Sam and Max. Sam and Max is one of my favorite games. Just downloaded and played the remastered version on Xbox. Matt says, "Ooh, misunderstood. I love Marathon and Redneck Rampage." That's great. Jared D says, "Oh, good grief. My mom bought all of those 101 games for your PC type CDs." Yo, Jared, do you like CDs? It had me load them for her, no matter how many she bought. She only played Mahjong. Isn't that great? But you need like 9 versions of Mahjong. Hey, Myra, how are you? Myra says, "Computer games, no, but I've been visiting old Dreamcast games like Shenmue lately." Nice. Left, no, right, left. So good. I could talk about this stuff all night. Carlos says, I am a Civ stan. I didn't know you got down with Civ. I don't think we've ever talked about Civilization before. I have 4, 5, and 6 installed on my PC right now. You know what? One of the things, and maybe this will be a good way to bridge topics into something else a little more even with people who aren't into this, is there's a bunch of things online that can supply you with old games. One of my favorite things that I found out about, and I'm going to act like a hipster and say I saw it first, but this place called GOG.com, goodoldgames.com. And what these people, these geniuses over here would do, would take old computer games that, say you have these floppy disks, like, your print, what was it, Print Shop, Riverwood Print Shop had like 700 CDs in it and floppy disks to install it in your computer. And it would take these old out of print games and do something to the code to make them current and run on current computer platforms. And then they would kind of wrap it up with like a PDF of the manuals and the soundtrack and cover art. It's a real nice package, and it's all DRM and you own it. And they have sales all the time, and it's almost like on Netflix. You just scroll and buy and scroll and buy. And I'm sure everybody knows about Steam, and Steam is the same thing. But one of the things that I don't really get down with, and I think this goes back to my, I need to put a bracket about around this, my undiagnosed ADHD, is that that stuff ceases to exist the second I exit the program. I just, I need physical objects. Um, maybe that's one of the curses of being a creative. Everybody in here who's a creative knows my pain, and if you're in a relationship with one, I'm sure you understand too. Like, I need to see it. I need to see it like this or like that. Um, so like, you know, talking about, if people talk about collecting games, digital kind of doesn't count because it doesn't, like, that's not sexy to say I have 500 games on Steam. Nobody cares. If you have 500 spines on a shelf, that's hot, right? So I have this old argument I used to have about, remember when the iPods first came out and everybody started ripping their CDs and throwing their CDs away, like their physical CDs. Yo, Carlos, you like CDs? Throwing their CDs away, and then they realized like the battery died and they couldn't figure out how to replace it, or they ran out of memory, or something happened to the iPod and they can't get it off of the thing, and now they wish they had the shit back. I'm happy to say I never succumbed to that, but I know a lot of people who did. And the early ideal of having everything in a little a little device is really amazing until you can't figure out what you want to listen to, right? Or you can't figure out what you want to play because you have too much. I think there's, with digital stuff, you run the risk of being frozen by choice. You have too many options. So, going to get a bunch of Steam games, I'm not going to play them because, I don't know. And there's also, I think, something to be said about buying one thing at a time. I had this experiment I was going to do. It didn't get far. Where I was going to try. You ready for this? I went to a Barnes and Noble once, and I said, you know what? I'm going to read One Piece and Bleach from the from volume one and just go through all of them. And I bought like Bleach number one and One Piece number one. I was going to, as I finished the book, I was going to go back and buy the next one, and that did not work. So I wonder what you guys think about that. Do you like collecting digital things, or do you need physical? Yo, like, you can still get some really good come ups if you go to the thrift store and they just have like a ton of CDs. Yo, I heard you like CDs. Um, right? They're almost free, but then it's kind of like reverse purging. Like, oh man, there's that, I don't know, those Jerky Boy CDs that I lost to the fire. I'm gonna get those again. So that could be dangerous. Yo, have you seen the new Sam and Max announcement? I think you know what? I'm not sure. You might have to tell me, Carlos, because I know Limited Run Games has been doing. They did a collection of some of like the Telltale games, but I'm not exactly sure. I'm the hugest Sam and Max mark. Um, for all of you diehards, I interviewed Steve Purcell in Draw Magazine years ago. I had a lot of fun, and I'm trying to get him on pencil to pencil. That would be a hoot. But yeah, tell me what happened. Fortnite. Oh, we're talking about. I thought you were talking about Fortnite. Talking about it ain't hard to tell. Myra says, I wasn't born at the time when this happened, but does anyone remember Atari's release of the ET game and how it almost ruined the video game industry? It was 82. Interested in hearing a story. Yeah, I'll talk about ET. So I go back so far. I was an Atari kid. The beginning of my dalliance with all this stuff was the arcades, right? we were kind of there at the beginning of the booming of the arcades. I remember playing Space War in the arcade, which was this giant, I think it was like a giant yellow cabinet, and it was just dots, like asteroids was hot, all that stuff. And then when Atari came out, and we talked about this last week a little bit. I remember I started subscribing to Atari Age, my first magazine, and I remember there was an issue where they had the ET art on the front, and they really tried to hype up ET. And you got to cop ET, and they made a lot of ETs. And there are people, there's hipsters and neckbeards that'll tell you that Atari was never good, right? Oh man, these graphics are squares and bleh. They probably weren't even there, so shut up and have a seat. But for people who were there, know that all this stuff was exciting. I remember the only thing I wanted for my birthday one year was the Atari Pac-Man. And my mother could not find it in the city of Philadelphia. She had to go out into the suburbs to find the stupid game. And the game was horrible, but we didn't care. Don't listen to revisionist history. It was dope because I had it and it was on my screen and everything was flickering. And I think there were 3 ghosts. There weren't even 4 ghosts. And then the tunnels were on the wrong side of the screen. They were up and down instead of sideways. And when my mother wasn't home, I turned the TV went inside so I could play. But ET was just bad. It was a bad game. And this is funny. If there was a you guys remember G4, that TV channel? I think they're trying to make a resurgence. There was a show. There was this cartoon called Code Monkeys. It was one of my favorite things, where it was all 8-bit sprites, and it was like these people lived inside a video game, and they worked at a video game company. And the revisionist history of the show was, it was in the 80s, and they had to make ET, and the guys didn't go to the movies to see the film for reference, so they made it up. It's hilarious. Go check it out. But anyway, yeah, ET was bad, but it was crashing anyway. Everything happened too fast, and I remember being on Chestnut Street during the beginning of the crash, and I remember vividly there was, those big metal hoppers that you see plastic balls in at the supermarket. You can pull a ball out and give it to your kid. It was filled with Atari 2600 games, the silver boxes, and they were $1 each. It was the good stuff. It was Kangaroo, Vanguard, Phoenix, Jungle Hunt. All that stuff was in there. And I was a kid. I didn't have any money. I had no money. Just, man, and I still think about, man, if I had a time machine, that's where I would go and cop those games. But yeah, it was just bad, and people were kind of over it because video games were still kind of a fad, and they had just dumped so much energy into it, and it didn't pay itself back. But that all changed when Nintendo came out. JRD talking about CDs. I toss the jewel cases in the recycling and store the discs with spindles, but geez, trash outright. Yeah, people just throw stuff away. And that's one of the things about collectors now, or especially video game collectors. I just read maybe a couple weeks ago that somebody sold a new shrink wrapped in the box Super Mario Brothers 3 NES game for like $640,000. I think it was slab too, because when this stuff came out, nobody had a nice shelf where you were displaying the boxes. You threw that shit in the trash because the Nintendo already had the little black sleeve on it. That was your cover. You didn't save the box. And I remember there was a point where I had like 2 or 3 games, my little baby collection, and I was just kind of like, what am I going to do with this Metroid box? And I just ripped it up and threw it in the trash. Who knew? But yeah, I think people just throw stuff away if they can't use it. Matt says physical. Let's get physical. Fletch says, I used to like physical, but I'm running out of space. Now I'm on board with digital and even streaming, where I don't even have a collection anymore. Just have access when I want it. I can feel that. Oh, it's a new Sam and Max. Yay! But it's VR. Boo. But it also it also comes with the Frogurt. Yay! But the Frogurt is also cursed. Yeah, I haven't gotten into VR. I don't know. I don't think that's me. JRD, you're famous. Oh, good grief. My kid just, notorious. Me, just accept it. Accept the love. El Jamal says, I have about 15 physical Switch games and even more in the Wii and Wii U. Yo, sip of coffee for the Wii U that I've never played. You know where you can send those, Jamal. I will take care of those. I also have hundreds. I have hundreds of books that I haven't read. I have no digital music that I haven't listened to. Huh. I listen to music as soon as I buy it. Usually, I listen to a new album on loop for a few days. I do the same thing. You got to put it in the chamber and spin it around for a while. Yo, what up, Kidlet? What's good? Suze. Good evening, Johnny Carson. That's great, wild stuff. Carlos, thanks for hanging out with me, bro. Carlos says, for me, I've grown to feel burdened by physical copies. Yeah. Having a shelf full of DVDs, CDs. Yo, Carlos, I heard you like CDs. I'm 12 years old. I never watched them, huh? I remember one day I watched Lord of the Rings on cable instead of off the shelf. So it's kind of like you're not going to take this one's no collector. So just because you have it doesn't mean you're going to like watch. No, I totally get that. I get it. E, what up, E? E says I played ET at a friend's house, so I didn't waste my money on it. But the Superman was just as bad. Yeah, Superman was horrible. Most Atari games sucked until Activision started. Yo, Activision changed the game. When Activision came out, it was on. There's a lot of really bad games, and I'm not like again. I don't want to contradict myself. Atari games, for the most part, were garbage, but there were a couple of publishers that almost like with NES, if there was a Konami game, you were probably going to buy it. That silver, when you saw that silver box, you knew it was great. Activision, all of those games were good. Pitfall is probably the most famous Activision game. Some of my favorites were Mega Mania, uh, Freeway, where basically Freeway, if I remember this correctly, is how did the chicken cross the road? That's the game. There's a chicken, and you got to get him across 9 lanes of traffic. So it's basically Frogger. And then I remember the iMagic lines. There was a silver box, and actually the tape was slanted. Demons to Diamonds was a great one. Atlantis. Oh man, that's what's in my head. My mental real estate is filled with all this old nostalgia. JRD got a rep Thin Man. I keep physical copies in case of major titles for me, like the Thin Man series, Red October. Here's a funny thing. You guys tell me there's got to be one thing or a couple of things that you have bought in several different variations over and over again. So it could be like, I know there's people that have the original Star Wars trilogy, 4, 5, and 6, in 9 different ways. Or maybe you keep getting remasters of Rolling Stones albums, or you've got the Beatles collection in 17 different ways. I'd love to hear about that. One of the things for me, going back to comics, is my boy Dave Cooper. I think I have Weasel, that one series he did, like 4 different variations of that. And if it comes out again, I'll buy it again. Yo, I never asked you to play nothing, right? Right. Yo, what you want to hear? Yo, that Wu-Tang joint again? Get it again. JRD says, I have about 7,000 discs. That Musicland Suncoast discount led to a lot of impulse buying. I did that at Warner Brothers Studio Stores. I bought a lot of junk with my friends and family discount. Should have bought some art sales. Jamal says, and I only buy whole music albums. Very rarely do I buy singles. Yo, you remember the single? That's very 80s. And iTunes changed the game with the dollar for a song, right? And that was like right after Napster blew up. Yeah, River Raid. See, I just got the goosebumps when you talked about River Raid. I was just talking to my cousin about Chopper Command. And those games didn't end. You just played them until they got so fast the screen started blurring. Also, the Atari version of Empire Strikes Back was not great, but made a lot of Atari games, and they weren't amazing. But Empire Strikes Back was pretty good. Yo, you know what? It's almost August, but there's always room for July. What up, brother? Good to see you. Wow, I'm just running my mouth. We haven't done an ID yet. Sue says Matt had the original Star Trek on VHS. We have Rockford Files on DVD and Blu-ray. Blu-ray is the only set that included the pilot with Lindsay Wagner. Ah, Jim Rockford is so good. And wasn't he the first person on TV to have a answering machine? Like that was a huge plot device of the Rockford Files. JRD says I buy almost every printing of Master and Margarita by Bulgakov, one of my favorite books. The same for Dave Stevens' Rocketeer. You're one of those Rocketeer guys. I never got into Rocketeer like that, but I get it. And I have 4 or 5 versions of the Giffen Justice League. I love it. I'm not reading the rest of your stuff. I don't know anything about Master and Margarita. You'll have to tell me about it. This might be a perfect time for an ID. Oh, I'll go put up there anyway. I even have Master and Margarita in Russian. Look at you, being all smart. Yeah, the Rockford Answer Machine had a new message every show. Wow, what year was Rockford Files? Was that the late 70s or was that the 80s? I feel like if it wasn't the 80s, it had to be like 79 or something. Oh, Jamal brings it in. Things that I've brought over and over again. Like Akira, the movie and manga, the first element. Leela with Multipass. In every release, 1984, the book. Nice. I've owned and given away over 20 copies. Yeah, you're a prognosticator there. Anybody else want to share anything that they've bought several times? I'm thinking about other things. I talked about in one episode of It Ain't Hard to Tell. Kane by Paul Grist is one of my favorite graphic novels. Well, I collected the floppies back in the day, and I have bought those books several times and let people borrow them, and I knew I was never going to get them back, and I'd buy it again. Kane is so good. July says I have 3 different versions of Jack Kirby's Fourth World. Yeah, there's something about good stuff. Oh, you know what? I have speaking of you, Julia, I have a couple of different versions of Ron's Prince of Cats. And I think in both or 3 of them, he wrote some real spicy stuff in it. But Prince of Cats is so good. JRD says I buy almost every Lego snow speeder, if that counts. Yes, it does count. I just saw this, not to be too much of a nerd, that they're starting to make, there's like a new line of the G.I. Joes, right? Or is it not Star Wars? I think it's G.I. Joes, where you can buy like a brick of dudes. Like I think you could buy like 5 Cobra soldiers in a box, which is what they should have did in the first place. Because if you guys were from my era, and we might have to talk about He-Man because I don't like He-Man, and we might I might see some angry emojis on the screen. One of the big trip ups from when we were kids and trying to get you could get a man out of the Toys R Us. You know, if you complained enough or bitched enough, your mom was just like you just get one thing. Is if you got a duplicate G.I. Joe man, that would cause problems. It's like, okay, I need another stormtrooper. Well, I thought you had a stormtrooper. But yeah, but you need more stormtroopers. I'm not getting you the same man. Get a different man. Like you have nothing to do with this transaction except paying for it. I know what I'm here for. I'm curating I don't know what curating meant back then, but so like say if you had birthday money, would you buy 5 Cobra soldiers and gung ho to beat them up? Oh, Matt checks in with Dar. New Frontier by Dar, several formats. You know what? This might. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I'm woefully behind on Darwin stuff. I know him and I adore his work, and I never met him, but I don't think I've read much of it. I think I want to. Parker is one of them, right? I think I want to start with that. Myra says Ocarina of Time on N64. Yes. Um, GameCube and DS. Okay. Although the DS version is meant to be easier so the kids can beat the water temple. Oh, the water temple. Jamal says, you don't have to like He-Man. I like it enough for the both of us. Yeah, I never got into He-Man. There's so many cartoons, and like He-Man is just was like. July says, I can't count how many copies of Street Fighter games I own through the that's almost like it but you have to buy Street Fighter. Every time they make it, you gotta buy it. Like that's not even in discussion. Like how can you not buy it? Cosigns, ditto a New Frontier, floppies trades in the omnibus. I have a bunch of the Walking Dead floppies, and then I have the black hardcovers. I have a bunch of them. I want to finish the set out, but I'm missing like the last 5, I think. And one of my buddies didn't get the floppies, but he got the thin trades, and there's like so many of those. I wouldn't even know where to begin. JRD says, "Oh yeah, I had plenty of those arguments with my mom about getting like the same man twice. The rebels always won quick because they only had to fight Vader and one stormtrooper. Did you like throw off the cliff and then he came back around a corner like he was a different guy?" Sip of coffee for imagination. JRD says, "I appreciate He-Man as camp in the UK sense, but I can't get into when it takes itself too seriously." All you He-Man stands. And it's funny, like, talking about this stuff, and we're truly showing our age. Um, you know, my existence was G.I. Joe and Transformers. It's funny when I talked to Manley, he was like, yeah, that was after me. I was into other stuff. But I think one missing thing of maybe what the new people have, the young people have, is that we still absorb all the old stuff, even though we weren't there for it. Like syndication of reruns was just part of television because there wasn't a lot of television. So we watched McHale's Navy and Gilligan's Island and Hogan's Heroes and Bewitched and Andy Griffith and all that stuff because it was just all on. Right. And I don't think young people today have the same breadth of or scope of old stuff the way we did. Like we just kind of watched the new stuff and everything else that came after it, and it was all in the same pot. It was all in the same gumbo. So really the only thing making things not new was that they might have been in black and white, you know. And I don't know why I thought McHale's Navy was hilarious, but what could I do? Eternity forever. What's going on? You had some really good questions last night on Pencil to Pencil. Coffee check. All right, cool. Let's see what's going on. Yeah, nobody checked me for a while, so let's see. I got to take you off screen, JRD, so I can do this. All right, so we started here, right? Started from the top. Now we're here. Bam. That's not bad. All right, we're going to keep rocking. El Jamal says, also Super Mario 1, 2, and 3. I have them across multiple consoles. Yeah, SMB 1, 2, and 3, Super Nintendo, Super Mario All-Stars, which has the Lost levels. What was that? The Japanese 2, which was Doki Doki Panic. Wait a minute, hold on. So Doki Doki Panic they turned into Super Mario Brothers 2, but then I think on the Super Nintendo All Stars tape they put another. I think they called it USA or something. Here's another thing. I'm not a big Super Mario Brothers fan, and I'll explain exactly why. My Mario, you ready for this? My Mario was Jumpman from Donkey Kong. And when I got a Nintendo, and this isn't a brag because I was probably a horrible child. I got the the big Nintendo set with Rob the Robot. And if you remember how that worked, if you got the big set with the robot, you got Duck Hunt and Gyromite. All the other kids who got like the smaller set came with Super Mario Brothers. I've never played Super Mario Brothers. I mean, I've played it at this point, but that wasn't my um, starting block. So I totally get the love for Super Mario. I'm not one of them. I think I've never finished a Super Mario game. I've never really been interested in it. But one of my favorite things is, you ready for this? It's Donkey Kong on Game Boy, because they do the first two or three levels. I think there's always a missing level depending on what thing you're on. There's the construction site. There's the elevators with the springs. There's the girders, and then you ready? You guys know this. Carlos knows. There's the cement factory, which is usually not in a lot of the ports because it was just too much. And that's where the little pies would go by. And it's really hard because the conveyor belts change direction. But yeah, I feel you. Eternity Forever, F Troop, F Troop with Larry Storch. See, nobody else would know this stuff now. And also, Larry Storch was on the original Ghostbusters black and white TV show with the talking monkey. Did the monkey talk? Have you ever seen the Filmation original Ghostbusters cartoon? That's why the Ghostbusters cartoon was called the Real Ghostbusters, because there was an IP issue. F Troop problem. We thought it was funny, even though I have natives in the fam. Then you get old. Not me being eternal and all. Well, you find out how hurtful those shows could be. Yeah, yeah. Like even just I don't know. The whole idea of spaghetti westerns is really problematic. Eternity says Duck Hunt and Mario 2-pack game. I ran into the ground on my NES. Yeah. Uh, JRD says, did Manly have the old G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip? My cousins had the big G.I. Joes. The 12-inch toy, that was only Joe I had until a friend's mom bought me a Cobra Trooper so I could play along. Yeah, like I had, and there's a lot of people our age who were in the Megos, like the dolls that you could change your clothes. I wasn't really into Megos or Migos, is that how you call them? But I do remember having a couple of dolls. I remember I had the Starsky and Hutch dolls, and it came. Well, it didn't come. It was a remote control Gran Torino with the cherry on top. Oh my God! Start that. You know, we come from the era of car shows, right? If there was a dope car in the show, it was on Starsky and Hutch, Knight Rider, 18. Um, yeah, so good. Speaking of Duck Hunt, I do remember trying to shoot that dog every time it laughed at me. Oh, did you know this isn't really a big secret. If you're playing Duck Hunt, you have the light gun and somebody picks up controller two. I think it's control, yeah. Because your first controller is the gun and the second controller, if it's open, you can change the directions of the ducks while they're trying to shoot them. Myra says, my brother's got the NES when everyone had the SNES. Okay. Most likely I'll have a PS5 when PS5 when PS6 comes out. I'm always a generation or two behind. I have a thing where unless it's super special, I have a problem paying $70 for a game. I do. And games have always been that expensive. If you look at some of those old Toys R Us ads, and especially when Super Nintendo came out and some of those RPG games, Final Fantasy was like $80 real rap. Final Fantasy, what was it, 2? I think was $80, right? And that was like what? What was that? 1989, 91? Come on. But also I know that, and this is a retro gaming tip, not much of a tip. If you stay a generation off, you can probably house a bunch of old stuff really cheap, right? You can go on Facebook Marketplace right now and get an arm full of PS4 games for nothing. So, if you just want, if you're like one of those people, and coming from the hood, I remember how exciting it was for somebody to cash a whole check out and come out with a game system and a rack of games. So it was just like, you're just flexing. But I don't have any impetus to get this new stuff, especially, and this might be the last thing I say about video games tonight, especially because the new stuff is so broken. Like, I don't want to buy a game and then you turn it on and then you gotta load up updates and DLC packs and that take hours. So I know a lot of people who do like the Madden midnight releases and all those kind of things will get a game and just like kind of get it set up and go to bed because it's got to load. But it doesn't load. Chunk. You don't need patches for Bionic Commando, fam. Word up. Hey, Mama Carla. Hi, Jamar. Hope you're having a great night. Now that you are here, I am. Been extra busy, but wanted to send out love for the captain of the caffeines. Good to see you. I hope everything's well. Yo, Paul Pate, what's up? Paul Pate says, been listening to all of this, Jamar. No idea what you're talking about. Electric football, analog all the way. Oh, man, we got to get in a game. But hold on, we talked about electric football, and I was excited to know, this is a while ago, that, and Paul is an aficionado of electric football, that people still make leagues up in teams, and you can go online and order the 85 Bears, and there's a guy who knows exactly how to, with a pair of needle nose pliers, knows how to do the tuning on Refrigerator Perry, so he like knocks people over. I love that stuff, man. I love it. July says, shoot, if you wait a few months, GameFly sells a lot of games for cheap quickly. That's why I have so many right now. I was a GameFly dude for a long time, and I know I copped a lot of games off of GameFly, but I started it was messing up my dopamine because I was just always like checking it and checking it and checking it and checking it. But I don't know. I might have to go back. We'll have to talk. Let me know if it's still worth copping. El Jamal says, talking about the car era of TV shows, the General Lee. You forgot the General Lee, and I know that's real problematic, but we were just kids, and the General Lee was dope. So I'll fight anybody who would say otherwise, unless you had some really like progressive parents who told you like, no, son, that's not the wave. But most of us did not have that. The first RC car I got as a kid was a General Lee. I was 4 years old. Christmas present from my grandmother's first husband. As an adult, I'm still super offended by that. Yeah. We didn't know. We knew, but we didn't know, if that makes sense. Eternity says, a friend of mine said Final Fantasy VII music was on the Olympic opening. I remember when they were really pushing the Olympics before all the pandemic and everything. I believe the mascots were going to be like, I think either manga characters or a couple of different otaku things, which I think is really cool. Like I think Astro Boy was going to be one of the Olympic mascots. and I'm salty because I don't think that happened, because I was about to cop every Olympic thing I could get my hands on. Them Dukes, them Dukes. All right, let's do an overdue ID. You're watching Coffee Break with JN, with your boy JN, doing business as the Kevin Bacon of comics. I haven't said that one in a while. Captain Scholastic, Johnny Carson, PM John, the Black Dusty Roads, and also your internet best friend. Hello, how are you doing tonight? What happens here? Well, you get to watch me, cartoonist Jamar Nicholas, drink this coffee out of my 100,000 horsepower Astro Boy mug and rub my mouth. And when I'm out of coffee, Myra says, PS1 polygon so sharp, like the models will poke your eyes out if too close to the screen. Tifa man, LOL. One of the best things is the PlayStation era is kind of like maybe the beginning of the video game hottie. Like Tomb Raider was a problem when Lara Croft came out and people started losing their minds. Um, and if you see the first Tomb Raider game and it's all polygony and Lara Croft looks like I have to pull that out. It's so funny, but but teenage boys were like, "Yo, this is the most amazing thing I've ever played in my life." And that kind of started this whole thing. So I think Tomb Raider has a lot to do with, I guess, video game culture, or maybe I don't know, weird, weird teenager culture. It's almost hard to find like the old pictures. Oh, here, this is good. Oh, this is like a video. I don't want to watch that. Oh, that's good. Just give me 1 second, you guys. And I hope everybody's enjoying themselves. But yeah, I mean, here's another thing. Well, I think I played one or two Tomb Raider games and I just wasn't into it. Also, when Resident Evil came out, that was a big game changer too. Who, Jill? That was close. If I was any later, you would have. I'm messing up the line. Jill Sandwich, or as we also know, Jill Valentine is the master of unlocking. You heard it here first. All right, let me see if I can find this. So yeah, I mean, you can just kind of see, like, I don't know if anybody has gone to seen those Tomb Raider movies or even like the newest version of Tomb Raider, but it's like it's a whole other thing now. Um, and I wonder how people feel about Lara Croft. Is Lara Croft like a solid part of pop culture now, or is it another video game thing? That's kind of like the Uncharted characters. People love, what's it, Nathan Drake? Is that his name? I'm still waiting for these movies to come out. I don't know. Yo, what up, Kirk's Pencils? Nice to see you, brother. Thanks for checking in. GameCube Sports were the bomb. Yo, can we talk about NBA Street? NBA Street was a problem, bro. Oh my gosh, we could talk all day about that. JRD does not like Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider is just ugh. Perfect opportunity of a great female character that they let old angry white dudes write. That's hilarious. right? So I mean, it's just this is kind of like the passing of time and just how things keep evolving, which I think is kind of cool, right? Um, so maybe before we wrap up, because I have a lot of coffee left, we could talk a little bit about. Um, and I don't really like to get into politics or any of that other kind of stuff, but I wonder if at this point, how are people feeling about going back to comic book conventions? We talked a little bit about this a week or two ago, but there's been some new mandates, which is making it seem like things are kind of rescinding again. Does that change your opinion about going to a comic book show? I wonder what you think. Oh, July, you hit it. They completely changed Lara Croft after Uncharted got big. It's a way better franchise now. I really like that the Tomb Raider remake. I probably played that the most of any Tomb Raider game. The one where she gets marooned on the freight ship. That's good. I mean, it's just good stuff. Myra says, I became a Lara Croft fan in 2013. She became a lot more realistic. JRD says, I like the Joali Angelina. Me and Ringo. I would call Ringo and we would just say Angelina Jolie into the phone until somebody cracked up laughing. It wasn't Jolie, it was Jolie. Matt says Delta's got me nervous. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say, but it's making me reconsider some stuff. And I was never comfortable to begin with, but now I'm like back to not being comfortable at all. E puts it right here on paper. I'm not doing any cons this year. Facts. Well, you know what? I respect your decision, E, and I want you and your family to stay safe. And is people being bored worth you getting sick? Like there's a video game convention. There's a big video game convention that they're selling tickets for in October. And somebody was like, "Yo, JN, you going to the thing?" And I was like, "No." The last thing I can think about is going to the arcade room and playing free to play arcade games in the middle of a pandemic. I'm not touching that. Some of it just doesn't make sense. Or digging around in an old box of plastic during a pandemic. Like some things just don't really line up. And I don't know. You got me. Fletch says, I'm excited about Comic Cons. I'm still a little nervous. Being fully vaccinated makes it easier, but I'll still be masked on the floor. Eternity says, I'm hesitant, but New York is my once a year vacation. I miss my friends. Oh, Jamal's got a plan. I'm doing outdoor shows, but nothing indoors. Maybe they should do New York outside. Yeah, and I know a bunch of people that have been doing shows, and again, and this is a thing that I'm always very eggshells when I talk about stuff like this because everybody has an opinion. I can't really say who's right and who's wrong, and that's not what Coffee Break with JN is about. We're just kicking it, but I just hope that people will make smart decisions. Right? Make good choices, like Jamie Lee Curtis says. Myra said, Torpedo was last week. It was great. Where was Torpedo Con? And just for anybody that's playing along at home, Torpedo was my first GI Joe. Everybody remembers their first Joe or whatever you're into. What was your first character in a toy line that you were really really into? And I may have gotten this wrong. I think it was either Torpedo or Snow Job that I got out of a Woolworths. And it was a wrap after that. I studied the back of that that card with all the other little dudes on it, like in little poses, and then had the little dossier. And I was like, I gotta get all of these. And I've been chasing that rabbit ever since. But yeah, it's a lot. We're going through storms. I need to be working on my next book. I'm doing edits for the first book at the same time, and I'm starting to think about travel, and I'm hoping things get to a manageable place so that I can start traveling and do some in-person appearances for Leon. And there's a lot to do, man, and it's just, I don't know, I just hope that we can make this stuff work. All right, Carla, have a good night. I feel like I went long this time, but we're going to wrap up. I'll see you soon. The first Joe I got for myself was an underwater dude with the mini sub. He was in a tricked out scuba suit. Oh, that was Deep Six, I think. And he came with the shark. That was a good toy. Oh, here's a funny G.I. Joe thing. Because the stuff was fairly cheap, except we started getting into the big vehicles. So there was the men, as we call them. You get a man, or you get a $5 vehicle, a $10 vehicle, and then it started getting expensive after that. I think like the $15 or $20 vehicles were like a Hiss tank. And the Sky Striker, I think it was like $45, the airplane. And everybody knows the holy grail of G.I. Joe items, the aircraft carrier. And I think there's still people who want the aircraft carrier. And I'm starting to see that same stuff happen again with He-Man. Like He-Man's hot again. And I just saw this picture of this grown man. I think it was, a setup. This grown man was on his knees, like holding like Castle Grayskull in the middle of the toy aisle. And his wife was like, no, 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 you're not buying that. I thought that was hilarious. Oh, Torpedo was in LA. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never been to Los Angeles. I hope to soon. But I've been to San Diego a bunch of times, and I've been around California. I've been like to Oakland and San Francisco and stuff like that. Jared D says, yeah, I was not hugely into the Joe stuff, but I wanted the carry just for the engineering. And that was another cool thing about the Joe vehicles. They came with blueprints, and it seemed like it was real. And then you got the decals to put on there. It wasn't just junk. It was like good junk. Matt says, I recently flew cross country for work. Nerve wracking, but it worked out okay. You need to stay safe, bro. Your safety is my number one concern. Big Jim Action Van. I remember Big Jim. So good. All right, you guys, I'm going to start wrapping this up. This was fun. Let me try to check off some other ID things. I have a couple of new Patronuses. I have to update this, but good looking out, you guys. If you enjoy watching me run my mouth and drink coffee in a purple haze, that's nothing but lighting. You can see more of me on my Patreon, where for the price of a cup of coffee, you can help support my artistic career. These fine people below at the $2 level, I shout them out every week on Coffee Break with JM because they're good people. Don't you want to be good too? Don't you want to get in with the winning team? Aren't you sick of taking L's? Don't take any more L's. Become a patron of mine. That's where all the winners are. They'll tell you. Suze will tell you. The USS flag. I still want the flag. What a holy grail toy. But there is another. There's another. The G.I. Joe Space Shuttle. Yeah. It was a 2-ship vehicle at a playset. So funny. Coffee check. All right, cool. I got you. It's getting close, man. Last check, we were at 75. Oh, that's painful. I'm almost at 0. I need like a 15. Jamal says, I still have my Castle Grayskull. It's on the shelf above me. You He-Man guys. I love it. JRD says, I'm a patron. He's a patron. She's a patron. Wouldn't you like to be a patron too, Dr. Pepper? And also, JRD knows his very first nickname with me was number one, aka Riker, aka Sits in Chairs Crooked. And that was because JRD is my first Patreon patron. And that'll never change. Sip of coffee for JRD. And JRD, I love that you get love in the streets. When you go to the go buy pork rinds at the 7-Eleven, you open the doors and somebody's like, no, notorious. And you're like, bruh, how did you even know I was the notorious JRD? How do you live with yourself? That's great. All right, you guys, I'm going to wrap this up. As Sue says, say your goodbyes, y'all. God willing, I'll be back here next Thursday at 9 p.m. I hope everybody enjoyed hanging out with me. I enjoyed hanging out with you. This is always great, and I miss my caffeines. You know who you are, caffeines. The friends and regulars, not decaf, of Coffee Break with JN. Thank you so much. Matt says, good night, everybody. Just like Chingy, everybody in the club getting tipsy. Good night, all. This has been great. And if you, oh yeah, take care of your dental health, bro. I'm glad that you're trying to get this stuff fixed. Good night, Fletch. And also, if you missed it, Pencil to Pencil is back. We had a really great episode last night with Bruce Zick. Bruce Zick was a illustrator and background artist on almost every cartoon you watched when you were a kid. We threw some jewels out there. Night, Carlos. My man worked on Mr. T. He worked on Turbo Teen. He worked on Rubik, the Amazing Cube. All of that Ruby Spears stuff. It was all in there. It was crazy. We can't mix the brands, but yeah, keep those Kirby hands clean. Oh, thanks, Mara. It's great to see you. Thanks so much. Guys, I can't do this if I don't have an audience, so thank you guys so much. Thunder. Thundercats. Eternity says that P2P was the best episode to date. Really? Bruce was amazing. I had a really good time meeting him and talking to him. The best? I don't know. We might have to do a top 5 list, and we'll have to see. We'll have to put that out there in the March Madness bracket. But I appreciate that. All right, you guys. I'm going to take it home. It was great talking to you. You've been watching Coffee Break with JN. Oh, wait, he's been Thunder and not Thunder. Oh, yeah, Thunder the Barbarian. He worked on all of that. I thought you were doing the Thundercats, John. You've been watching Coffee Break with JN, with me, JN, a.k.a. Johnny Carson, PM John, Swagger Coach. That's an old one. There's this Dungeons and Dragons podcast called Crit Juice. Where a bunch of comedians in LA got drunk and played D&D, and I was like a regular on the show, and I was their swagger coach. You've been watching Call Break with JN with me, Jamar Nicholas. We're going to wrap it up. What happened here tonight? Well, you got to watch me run my mouth and drink coffee, and now that I'm out of coffee, this video was over.